Dear friends, welcome aboard this new video where I continue talking about the navigation system I used in the past and how they came about to the modern era. This is today's gadget that brings up the stories that I continue talking about the sextant and navigator, and this is a mini sextant. It actually works. I talked about the navigator on board my early flights, used this principle to find out position as we flew over the vast expanse of the South Atlantic with no other navigation aid. The principle was this: measure the angle above the horizon of the sun or the stars, but the instrument used was the sextant was a periscope sextant, unique for use on aircraft. Was not easy in the early days as aircraft were rudimentarily built. No charts, no meteorological information, mechanical standards, poor to say the least. The fuel has no unique standard as you have today, and definitely no radio. So safety had appalling results. The navigation used visual aids, was all by visual contact, and that was the norm. And they use aids like this, aids built for the purpose of navigation, like this arrow, that was used by the U.S. Postal Service after the World War I. At a certain point, there was the need to develop charts, and with known features to follow. And the use of rudimentary road maps was the first thing used, and that was transformed in the aeronautical charts. The first charts, obviously, the road maps have no obstacles, no minimum safe altitude. The pilot would just follow a road to a given destination. Use of radio aids was always guarded as a military secret, and no one was willing to guide the enemies to its own territory anyway. So the real development of navigation aids came after World War II. This real navigation aid, radio navigation aid, was Fly the Beam. The audio aid was very important, and hearing and identifying the site by identifying the letter that you're being transmitted. One side was A, Alpha, the other side was November, N. And so it was important for the pilots to understand the Morse code. It's true till today. And actually, all those transmissions were done via Morse code, like a telegraph. Therefore, on the medical exam, hearing tests is one of the most feared by the pilots. Of hearing loss, even little hearing loss can lead to early career end. So that's very important for the pilots today. Anyway, the next step was the non-directional beacon. So there was no indication. You only one fly the beam. You could fly on any direction to a certain beam, like a radio station, any radio station, and that was done by moving the antenna. You see here, old antenna, and that was done by the navigator, and the strength of the signal indicated that you're in the correct direction. So as strong it was, that was the correct direction to the station. If the signal turned weak, you're going off track. The automation and the mechanical development of the antennas and the use of different frequencies, stronger, the VHF, and the radio bands were distributed throughout the spectrum for navigation. Was a vast development, but nothing to the ocean. So the sextant and navigator was still important at a very late stage in the development of navigation. Navigation over land was done through fixes taken crossing lines of position derived from these radio indications. or distance to and from a station as dual frequency transmitter in a VHF frequency range developed. All the progress and everything was calculated using the computer, analog computer shown here. This computer, the round one, is basically an endless calculating rule, as the one used by the engineers once. Those were analog mechanical computers, as they transform a physical measure in numbers, giving results by opposing related measures. I stopped the boring stuff regarding the navigation system here to tell a very important story. It's a story within story in this storytelling and this video, which is how I got to the Air Club. And also there's a relation with this that I'll talk about. I put on another slide part of this video, side by side, this flight computer, that's how it's called, analogic flight computer, because it's sliding surfaces, and you get to the numbers by sliding the disk and aligning with the numbers and putting getting the results with the cursor. Do a serious amount of calculations, wind calculations, and so on. I love this very much. I have two of those. Still from the old company. First was part of the uniform. Remember the video that when I put on the pockets are this size. In every shirt, pilot shirt is this size to get this. Anyway, this was on the side of the sliding rule, and the reason I put the sliding rule because they are both analogic computer, and is that when I decided to go to Europe to fly, and I had this passion for airplanes and flying since I was a very, very little kid. My father didn't like the prospect of aviation career because he, when he was younger, had been in an accident with a toy plane. He was a passenger on a small plane, and he broke his leg, so he was not very happy. He was afraid of flying, so no aviation for us, especially for me, that was the one looking into this direction. And to make the things worse for him, my uncle, his brother, his younger brother, was engineer, professionally engineer, but he was a sports pilot, a private pilot, and the president of the local aero club. I think they had an agreement when they were young, or when they decided something, that my uncle never invited us or to go to the aero club, or took us for a ride on the airplane. Never mentioned, although he would fly over our house on the seaside in the summer, but not going to the aero club, not flying with him. Anyway, when moment arrived, I went to him and said, "Uncle, I want to go to the aero club." Quickly he picked up his car and off we go to the aero club. And the rest is history. But to do anything in the aero club, I needed permission from my father, an authorization, because I was a minor. I was 16 years old, and he has to sign a document with an authorization. And he was not happy. And when I mentioned not happy, he was not happy at all doing that. But he finally signed, because he knew that he couldn't hold me back. But there was a but, and he came with a but, which was I had to go to the university as well, like all my brothers and sisters, have to go and study something in the university besides of being a pilot. At the moment, I was thinking on a career, but was far in the distance. So I went to the university, and Brazilian universities, public university, you do an exam, you enter, and it's almost free university. So we all went to university, but it's very competitive to get into. And I did succeeded to get into mechanical engineering, which was what I wanted to go. So my uncle, which was an engineer, he was a civil engineer, he gave me several books and a sliding rule, also called slide stick, that I put on the side of this, on the other image. That was for the engineer, this is for the pilots. And so he was very proud of another engineer in the family, even if his sons went to engineering as well. But the pilot career was one of a kind. And I did the private pilot license in the Aero Club. He was being president. And then came the opportunity to join the airline. It was an exam, very competitive selection, and many people trying for very few places, and I succeeded as well. So that's how my career started in the Varig school, and I ended in 77. Well, the Aero Club, which you see in the background here, was in another location, and there were gravel strips and wooden hangar, but it was on the right in the path of takeoff of an Air Force base. The Air Force would take off with F-5s flying very, very low over us. So the government, because all the air clubs have to do with the government, offered another location. So the air club moved and progressed. You see paved the runway, big hangars. They have a flight services station in there, lots of serious training, and it's international recognized, and there are a few pilots that did the training there from other nations that I had the opportunity to fly when I was in the Middle East. So I flew with them, and they said, "Ah, you're from Porto Alegre." Oh yeah, I've been there. I did my commercial license there. So well, that was interesting. I didn't know that was happening. I put the link of the Aero Club below on the comments. You can check Aero Clube do Rio Grande do Sul. I'm very proud of being there, being a pilot that trained there, and also very proud that the highlights of my career, one of them was to have my father and my mother flying with me when I was a captain. That was very unique because he was afraid of flying. He flew a lot, but not very happy flying as well. But he went with me on a flight. I was the captain, and that was very dear to me. My father working in his office. Now back to our subject. The radio aids were used for navigation, were then complemented by computer. The frequencies got more sophisticated, the signals, the computer progressed. We left the analog you see on the 707 panel to the digital and on the space shuttle. I talked about the system used, the inertial navigation, which was a standalone system. And the other system I mentioned briefly in those on the first video of the Navigator was the Omega. The principle used was how the radio waves propagate. VHF, very high frequency in a straight line, and was receiving in line of sight. You can only transmit go on a straight line, departing from the surface of the Earth. So if you are below the horizon, you won't take any signal from the radio station. As an example, so around 200 nautical miles, you start getting signals from any station if you're flying around 30,000, 31,000 feet. The HF, the high frequency, the one that is used for talking, communication, and that was used and mentioned in the first video as well, is the HF. There are two parts of this transmission. One goes around to a certain point around the globe, and the curvature of the Earth, and the other one goes to the ionosphere and bounce it back to Earth, and that's why we hear these communications on a long distance. Is used also till today by the radio amateurs that use these frequencies to talk to each other. And the omega, in this case, used a very low frequency, which was only this around the curvature of the Earth. So if the station was very strong, had a very strong transmitter, you could receive the signal very far away. 2 or 3 stations would produce lines of position. Crossing those lines of position, a fix, and the computer on board would calculate where what was your position based on the known position of these transmissions. In a third and last video about this subject, under my stories, I'll carry on, tell you how the sun and stars and how they work for and against aviation and more. Look for it. Do not forget to like and subscribe. It will help me to progress with my stories that I love to tell. And if you want to know more, please make a comment below. Thank you very much. All the best and stay safe.